Pause for a moment, take a breath, feel awe and appreciation for being alive. You're here, present, listening. Welcome to the audio version of Awe Digital Wellness Podcast, where we explore mental health, happiness, and the beautiful, messy, complicated relationship we have with ourselves, other humans, and with technology. Make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app and on our social medias, and more importantly, to visit and reach out to us on our website at awe.digitalwellness.com. Each week, we'll dive into the science, the stories, and the practical strategies that help us thrive, both online and off, because well-being isn't about disconnecting from technology, it's about creating real connections and communicate with communities with open discussions. Even the difficult topics, we will get to it. Let's dive into this week's episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the AWE Digital Wellness Podcast, hosted by me, Mark Ritter, and as always, Mr. Christian Dominique. Christian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
We're going to talk about burnout, which might be a very relevant topic considering the events of the technical difficulties and the podcast guest having trouble registering. So how do we deal with this sort of stress at work, and when it becomes chronic, that can turn into burnout? Very prescient topic, very relevant. So looking forward to talking about it with you today, Christian. Could you, maybe we take a step back initially. Yeah. Could you just explain to us what is burnout for people who don't know what it is?
So burnout is definitely something that is thrown around and people might construe it as different things. It's really when you're exhausted mentally and physically about your work. And that means that you're not motivated, you don't enjoy time with your colleagues as much, and you are experiencing some deep signs of fatigue, irritability, anxiety, and sometimes depressive symptoms with no motivation, not wanting to wake up and do anything.
World Health Organization actually recognizes it as an occupational phenomenon that results from chronic stress, right? And there's usually 3 dimensions to it, as people will characterize. You have feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, as you put it, increased mental distance from the job itself that you're doing, and reduced professional efficacy. So not being able to do your job anymore, right? And here's some statistics that have been released by a recent workplace wellness report. I think the WHO as well was involved in this. So around 42 to 48% of the estimated global workforce have experienced burnout at some point, and they have perhaps a lack of role clarity. Middle management, around 53% of them have experienced burnout as well. Healthcare workers, that's certainly higher, 58 to 62% of healthcare workers due to staffing shortages and moral injury. And creative sectors, perhaps most of the people who are on LinkedIn, around 45% due to this always on culture and having to compete with AI now, right? Because AI can do your job better than you can in a lot of senses. And so how am I going to compete with that unless really pushing myself until the brink of exhaustion, right? Usually to measure it, researchers have used what is called the Maslach Burnout Inventory, the MBI, which measures the conditioning and typically follows a progression. So first you have exhaustion, physical and emotional, dry tank feeling. Number 2 is cynicism, depersonalization. So developing a detached or callous attitude toward your clients or your colleagues. Number 3 is inefficacy. So the feeling that your work no longer matters or that you are incapable of performing. It's a type of corporate nihilism that especially pervades the workforce nowadays, especially even the onslaught rise of AI. Even Block, a company by Jack Dorsey, announced today that they had just laid off 40% of its workforce. So when that happens, when people find out that they are dispensable, right? And the only way to secure their job certainty is to work even harder, you have a perfect recipe for chronic stress and burnout symptoms. So more than prescient topic that we're talking about today.
Thanks. And there is everything that we do here at Digital Wellness is about awareness and trying to be proactive and do prevention. We are here, and we also want to make sure to let people know if you're feeling those issues, reach out to us or to a healthcare professional. It is wise to be able to to seek help. So it's wisdom, not weakness. And if you are there, please reach out to us at AW or to someone in your community that can help. And we also want to make sure that we want to prevent those. We don't want you to get to the point of burnout and exhaustion. And there's ways that we can proactively prevent those symptoms to a cure or the actual diagnosis of burnout and the consequences. I have friends in different sectors that have experienced severe burnout. Sometimes it takes months and years to get back from it. A lot of close people in different geographies, different jobs. And again, sorry for people that wanted to hear stories of Sanjay Anand today. He will be back at a different time. And his story is being, an executive, a general manager at Google, VP and managing director, Microsoft, Google. So those are high executive roles that can take your toll. We talk about the age group, mid-career, 40s. It can happen at any time. People can have burnouts at 20 or at 50. But, let's talk a bit more about some of the solutions that we can use at any age to prevent burnout. Mark?
Yeah, it can happen at any age, but I think we are pointed to Dr. Anand, having worked at these really prolific tech companies like Google and Microsoft. There's a lot of expectation when you are on the global stage to perform. And I think a lot of people there, perhaps, and I see this a lot, having lived in Europe and the US, something in American culture. I'm not sure if you see this in Canada as well, Christian, but people are a lot of times afraid of losing their jobs, which also causes them to not take as much vacation. When they do go on vacation, they still will be reachable via email, right? Whereas in Europe, people are just completely disconnected. They're on vacation for 2 weeks, not reachable at all. But the idea in the US, and I think this has to do with employment laws, is that in the US, you can be fired with 24-hour notice, right? You're no longer employed by this company. Goodbye. And people are constantly afraid, if not being replaced by AI, but being replaced by somebody else who might be more qualified and capable than you are. So what this causes is a perfect recipe for, burnout, because people are working so hard because they're afraid of losing their job and they're afraid that they might end up on the streets. And if they end up on the streets, there's perhaps not many government programs that will take care of them like there would be in Europe with a much more robust social welfare system that would catch them. So again, the result is, very good for the economy, for the GDP, because a lot of people are working, but not very good for the mental well-being of the workers themselves in the US, at least. Do you see that in Canada as the same? Do they have similar workplace laws over there?
Yeah, it's very similar. That's one thing, having traveled the world and worked in different places, that I always say that we can learn from Australia, which has, 4 to 8 weeks, maybe 9 weeks if you're in a government vacation. Europe has 4 to 5 normally. And the laws in Canada are very similar to the US. So it's minimum of 2 weeks, which is definitely not enough. We have a little bit better for maternity, paternity, and parental leave than the US. And then the work culture depends on the province as well. Toronto is very much similar to the US in terms of work. And then Quebec province and Montreal, a little bit more family, vacation, and life balance.
Yeah.
A little bit more influenced by Europe, exactly. That's what you're talking about.
Okay, so Quebec is a little bit more European, and then Toronto's a little more of that hustle culture, right? A lot of it is directly related to the work culture, employment laws that you see, the fear that you might end up being homeless, which is very real in North America, especially after the pandemic. But now we're going to see, I don't want this to be like a doomsday podcast, but the fact that there's a lot of firms laying off thousands of their workers, like I mentioned before, like with Block today and Jack Dorsey, it creates an extra stress, extra burden on a lot of the workers about what do I do now? I have to learn new skills, start a new career, perhaps, right? But just chronic fatigue and exhaustion, like you said before. What do you think about the current situation, the current climate in tech, especially since tech is so volatile?
Well, it's always good to take a step back and not just look at those news, scary headlines about being replaced by AI, by other people, or losing your job, which can and probably will happen. But we try to take a more holistic and systematic approach at AW to say, let's cater about your mental health and wellness in general, so that when things like this happen, you're more prepared and resilient, right? And some of the tools that we have, as you might know if you're a regular at the podcast or on our Patreon, is our resets. So we help people kind of regain calm and focus and perspective, right? Because it's easy to look at one headline and one other, but people don't really take the time to take perspective about, okay, what's going on? Am I grateful, or do I appreciate the circumstances that I have a job now, that I have my health, that I have my mental health? And is that more important important than, being a number in a company that might decide that you're productive or not, or that their bottom line doesn't include you in their plan, right? And it's really to use some of the happiness and well-being topics, frameworks that we built to help people decide and understand what they have control over, what they should act upon, and not just accumulate stress and anxiety, which most people do and accumulate until burnouts happen, right? So it's really to have a preventive approach and a comprehensive approach that includes physical wellness, mental wellness, time for nature, time for family, resets that bring you joy, awe, fulfillment, and bringing back that kind of playfulness and joy in the day. It sounds stupid to say, right? Playfulness and joy when we have a deadline to do. No, it's important, right? What are some of your experience and ideas on that, Mark?
Yeah, well, as you were talking, I almost had the thought that somebody who advances in their career, right? Maybe they start off as an entry-level software engineer at a FANG company and they're making $120K a year, and then they go up to 180, 200, and they're making $300,000 a year. And then all of a sudden they're replaced or they get laid off, and then they're forced to work a job that makes, 120 or 150, which is still well above the average salary in the US. But all of a sudden it becomes really painful because you dropped from what you previously were to a much lower salary. And it's difficult to tell somebody, just be happy. And I'm not saying that you're saying that at all, but it's difficult to get people to appreciate the things that they do have when they are measuring their own worth so substantially by their salary and the amount of time that they invest in their career. And to think that they've lost all those years building up their career only to be replaced by whatever factor, it does make people feel like there is a sword of Damocles, the Greek fable of the sword hanging by the single hair above the king who was eating at the dinner. They're a step away from some sort of catastrophic situation where they will lose their job. And that's what causes this chronic stress feeling always being on the line. So I just wanted to add that is a very real feeling, and then perhaps difficult for people to appreciate how fortunate they are. I really
like not the analogy, the story that is many people's story. They get a promotion, they get there, and then for some reason they get a lower paying job in the same company or a different company. And, I'm not saying just be happy, yet I am saying be happy. Just be happy, but there's ways to do it. You're not going to instantly just feel happy. But, if you train, our philosophy is unconditional happiness, right? So it doesn't matter what's going on around you. It doesn't matter if your partner leaves you, if you lose your job, if you're sick, we're building people to be happy and resilient regardless, right? So it's not just be happy, but it can be eventually when you train, when you practice. So it's happiness and well-being as a practice, not just as a pill that you swallow and you're good, right? There is a lot of ways to go about it. We talk about it in some of our blogs and our resets. And if you want to know more, reach out to us in terms of being happier and reducing the chance of physical, mental issues and burnout that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, and I think to somebody who is chronically stressed and fatigued, having somebody tell you just be happy or be happy can almost sound condescending, right? Because they're like, how dare you just, tell me that? That's like, once you learn to let go of the stress, right? Once you learn to let go of that desire, and the Buddha famously said the two sources of suffering are desire and avoidance of pain, right? So if you learn to let go of those things and you find peace, you can actually work much more productively. We've talked about this on previous podcasts because you don't feel like there's something on the line that you have to work for. So
you can also work in a place of purpose, right? So you're not just working because of fear, because of pressure. You're working because that's your purpose. And it's not even, you don't have to attach an identity, your purpose. You're working purposefully with intention, right? With meaning.
Just some statistics here in case people are like, burnout, it's not a big deal. Burnout is actually responsible for approximately 20 to 50% of annual staff turnover. And estimates suggest that burnout related lost productivity costs the global economy roughly $322 billion annually. So keep that in mind. So half of all annual staff turnover is due to burnout related issues, and $322 billion annually. So we're talking about bigger GDP than most developed countries in the world is lost due to burnout related lost productivity. Those are huge numbers we're talking about, but still people are maybe not taking it as seriously as they should. What do you think are some of the contributing factors to burnout in our modern day and age?
There's many. We can start the list by social media, as we talk about. We can talk about
Digital
multitasking, digital fatigue, decision fatigue. There's too much choice, too much information, too much content, too much dopamine coming in, and too much expectations as well, right? So burnout's coming from you need to do 100 things yesterday and you've only done 2, and one of them is not done very well. So how do you feel about that, right? And then, why can't we work from a place of, not only contentment for what we do, but also compassion and altruism for what we're doing in the world, right? And when you do something that's beyond your own egotistic identity of I need to do this to get the paycheck or to prove that I got a promotion, all of a sudden there's less burnout because you're doing, like I work sometimes 20 plus hour days, but I'm not burnt out because I'm doing it with a purpose, right? And I don't recommend anyone to do that. I'm just saying when you're doing something and you have a purpose and meaning, the work is not there against you. It's you're giving the contribution to society. And we just had a comment from Left Terrace, which was in an earlier podcast this week. So if you want to look at that podcast where Left Terrace was our guest, Left Terrace Heretics, he mentioned money should be the byproduct of work that generally benefits others, not the sole purpose for doing it. Excellent quote. I love it. I think that once you're doing something you're contributing, you're making the society better, then you can, and it's not a dirty thing to have money after that. And you can have lots of it if you want, but that's not the idea. And if you're focusing on generally helping people, your chances of burnout are lower.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And your chances of happiness and well-being are also higher, right?
So first off, thank you for the comment, Left Terrace. I couldn't agree more. It's much more sustainable to focus on how do you contribute to humanity and how do you help others instead of just money itself, because that is a never-ending greed spiral that will lead people down a dark path. Christian, everything you're saying makes sense, but how do we do this practically? I mean, a lot of people, they'll nod their heads, but they might not want to necessarily go on some psychedelic ayahuasca trip to just let go of all of their desire for material wealth in order to find happiness. What are some practical ways that some of the people who are watching this podcast can actually start implementing some of those things?
Very good comment. And yes, as we mentioned often, a lot of people, they get it cognitively. They're like, yes, I agree. And then they go around doing their day and well, I didn't use that. I'm still stressed. I still want more money. I still this, right? It's kind of a practice, right? So practical way of practice, right? So we need to practice using time to listen to our, awe experience audio that we have on Patreon is one of them. But you can listen to other audios, or you can have people in your family do some activities that work in congruence with that, right? So we also have some resources that explain how we can spend only 5 minutes a day looking at admiration, appreciation, and gratitude. So yes, gratitude practice, is it really helpful? Yes, a lot of studies show that there is great level of increased well-being.
I think it was Left Terrace who left most of the comments.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. 100%. Everyone must create their personal manifesto. Yes, thank you, Left Terrace. This is our biggest fan today, and adhere to their personal set of values.
In practice, it is always action, right? And action can be, waking up a little bit earlier to read and not be on your phone, or not check all your calendar for work, right? So work is important, but we need to create a work-life balance, a tech-life balance, right? We need to create those spaces. And practically, right? It's not just, okay, be happy, everything is good, have a gratitude journal. No, it's like, can you take the time? What we talked about in some of our funnier videos, if you want to look at Mark and I making fun videos in person together, we talked about journaling, right? So that's one of our earlier videos. Is journaling effective or not? Mark used to say at that time, I think I convinced him that it can be effective. There's different types of journaling. And it's not just about journaling. It's, are you just writing it to say that you did it, or are you taking the time, right? So in our journal, we have like guidelines that explain to you how to use the journal and how to make it effective, because it's not just journaling, it's journaling. And how do you take the time to appreciate the good and really focus on it for 45 seconds, not just write it and go to the next thing, right? So there's many things that if you really want to practice, you can, but it's not just going to be from this podcast. It's not going to be from you doing it once. It is to train yourself and to do it every day so that it impacts your life in a positive way, and those around you, your family and your community and work colleagues.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it also makes me think think that perhaps one of the drawbacks with modern therapy or coaching is that a lot of it can just fall into the realm of talk therapy, talking about theories, ideas, the oohs and the ahs and like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then the client just falls back into like the rhythm, the habits of their day-to-day life without implementing any of the changes that were discussed in the session. So to ensure active coaching, I always tell my clients, I was like, most of the therapy is actually going to happen between sessions. So 156 hours a week, it's going to happen those 155 hours where you're not talking to me, right? Where you're actually implementing the ideas.
I do the same with my coaching clients. And it's like, you're going to come and I'm going to be a guide and I'm going to help. But between the session, the work is there and you're going to have homework. And if you don't do your homework, then don't think that it's going to be moving in the right direction, right? Or we can analyze if you didn't do it, why and how, and there's ways to go around it. But there's always work between the sessions because that's when it really gets embodied and applied to life.
So I thought about this very thing a lot, I'm starting to, talk to parents of kids who are addicted to their phones, a lot of concerned parents out there. And I think in that area, talk therapy is not sufficient just to treat them. It's one of the reasons that, together with Awe, both Christian and I, we co-founded Awe Digital Wellness, but in conjunction with Awe, we did develop the Awe Smarter Phone protocol, which uses both therapy and coaching and a physical hardware phone with software on it, along with the coaching and teaching people how to use it. You're actually giving people the talk therapy that they need in the sessions. And then you're using a physical device to make sure that you actually implement the things that you agreed to during the sessions throughout the entire week. And I think that's one of the brilliant things is that we've recognized that self-help can only get you so far. Talking to people can only get you so far. Words can only get you so far. But to take you beyond that, you actually either need some sort of authoritative figure like a parent or a drill sergeant telling you do this, do that, or technology that just benefits you to bring you towards your goals and reduces bad habits. And that's why, we've developed Lumi, we've developed the All Smarter Phone, we've developed all these things so that you don't have to join the military. You don't have to have some sort of asshole boss shouting at you doing those things. You can have technology that works for you instead of against you.
I would love to go and join a team to go kill people in other countries, don't you?
Yeah. Hold on that. Let's take that clip. Let's take that clip and have it go viral right now. I would love to kill people in other countries.
Yeah, with no sarcasm, no context, that will be funny. So just to, by the way, if you're watching and you know about Lumi, which is our happiness AI, you can find that at awedigitalwellness.com. Lumi just got a voice, and maybe we can even ask, since we don't have a guest, maybe our marketing team can ask Lumi. We can put Lumi on a screen and ask Lumi what they think about some of the topic today. In the meantime, I think that the tech that we're building is tech for good. Calm tech movement. We're really wanting to use the technology to create happiness and well-being. In terms of also, you're talking about parents. The team today is 40s and not midlife crisis, mid-career, but it could be midlife crisis. One of the reasons perhaps that people in mid-career have also problems is that their lovely kids become teenagers, right? And that sometimes is a difficult time of life, right?
It's a very difficult time.
Work is something that can create burnout, but also having teenage kids after raising them for 13 to 15 years and they're ungrateful and they're not doing the gratitude and appreciation journal. So you have ungrateful kids and ungrateful bosses. That's the recipe for burnout, don't you think?
100%. And I think kids are just being bombarded with different information, messages, stimuli. It's harder than ever. I'm so glad I dodged that bullet of growing up without a phone, growing up without pervasive internet. I was I think 14 when the Motorola Razr came out, and that was the coolest phone on the market. But, well before the iPhone, the first smartphone. And I'd argue the first smartphone wasn't even that harmful because we didn't have the technology, the over-engineered apps and algorithms to make social media so addictive on those phones. It was literally, it was just a screen and it had limited functionality. And I think people used it in a way that wasn't as unhealthy as the kids do today.
So just to continue on this idea of tech for good. So, smartphones might not be the best thing. That's why we invented the smarter phone that is smarter than your teenager, because your teenager is probably smarter than you, and especially in technology, they will find ways to go around your parental guidance. You can also find our interview of Marvel, neuroscientist in the 20s, admitting that he is much smarter than his parents, not because he's a neuroscientist, just because he's a teenager, and was able to go against his parents' wish to not be on the phone and tablets, and had very bad mental health and physical health consequence. You can check that at our YouTube channel, Digital Wellness. And, we do have Lumi, so maybe, people will not be replaced by AI. But today, since Sanjay could not make it, he's not replaced. We'll invite him another time. But let's ask Lumi, what question do you want to ask? I have this tab open. We can't put it on screen, but tell me a question you want to ask Lumi, Mark.
I would say, why am I feeling burned out, and what should I do about it? Anybody who's watching, again, you can try Lumi on our website, awedigitalwellness.com, for free. It's available on the website. Try visiting awedigitalwellness.com URL.
I just typed this question, why am I feeling burnt out, on our Lumi AI, and I'll read out loud the answer. And you can comment on that, as humans are probably better than AI, but they're here to help in between sessions, as we mentioned. So the answer of Lumi is, feeling burnt out can often be a sign that your energy and resources are being depleted faster than you can replenish them. This might result from prolonged stress, overcommitment, lack of rest, or feeling disconnected from your work or personal goals. An important signal from your body and mind asking you for attention and care. Reflecting on the 4 ACEs: awareness, acceptance, appreciation, and awe. Can you identify any area in your life where those elements are lacking? So it's asking you, what can you find in awareness, acceptance, appreciation, or awe that may be lacking? You want to answer a hypothetical answer, and we'll give a last chance of Lumi to enlighten us today.
Yeah, I'm not feeling very appreciative of my current job or my relationship.
So not appreciative of current job or relationship. Lumi responds, it sounds like you're recognizing a disconnect in feeling appreciation for significant aspects of your life. This awareness is a crucial first step. Sometimes the daily grind can cloud our ability to see value and joy in these areas. To cultivate more appreciation, you might consider reflecting on what initially drew you to your job and relationship. What were the qualities of moments that sparked joy or gratitude? Even if it feels challenging, try to identify one small thing in each area that you can appreciate today.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That can be also applied to relationships. If you're having relationship difficulties, you can just ask yourself, what was it that attracted you to that person in the first place? What was it that sparked excitement initially? And when did that excitement leave?
So very practical.
Yeah.
What can you appreciate today? Reflective awareness. If you're not able to speak with Mark or I live like Lefteris is and asking questions, feel free to ask Lumi in the meantime.
Yes.
And thanks for those answers, Lumi. Lumi will be a new guest, I guess, sometime. It's
Lumi will join us next time. I wonder what Lumi looks like.
Yeah. And tell us in the comment if that's useful or not. Reach out to us as we're improving our AIs. And we are also launching next week Medi. So Medi will be your new AI that's coming out also with a voice. We don't know what it looks like, but we'll have not only one voice. It's not a real human. It is an AI, but it is based on real, helpful human neuroscience, psychology, and happiness principle that you can apply today in practice. Going back to the theme of mid-career, what are some other pressures, for burnout, for mid-career? We talked about children. We talked about promotion or demotion. What other factors should we consider at, executives, professionals, managers that might be watching us today?
I don't even think we touched on the children aspect really, but a lot of people are declining to have children because they're so focused on their careers, because they're so worried about losing their jobs, which is subsequently causing the birth rate to drop in a lot of developed countries like the US, like Canada, Germany, France, UK. Birth rate is declining because people don't have time for kids. They see them as expensive commodities. Consequently, kids could bring a lot of happiness. I'm not saying they always do, but having a child, I've heard from many people, is a very beautiful thing in one's life and to take care. And so I did see a report from somebody on LinkedIn recently showing that people or women with kids on average, and I don't think this is a controversial point at all, women with kids on average tend to be much happier even at work being more productive, having children. But I think the fear of the uncertainty is what prevents a lot of people from having kids in the first place. So the question was, okay, what are some of the other contributing factors to people in their mid-40s who are experiencing burnout? I think, beyond AI, beyond having children, beyond the pressure to keep your job, let's ask Lefteris. He says in the chat.
He's in mid-career, yes.
Yeah, Lefteris, why don't you chime in and tell us, what do you think are some of the contributing factors? Because I think we did mention.
We had a lovely talk on the two podcasts, on Lefteris podcast and on ours this week. His was last week, but coming out, I think, this week. And we talked about education mostly and how education can be better. We talked about art and play and many things. We have someone from
Canada. Hope you're well. So relate to this topic from reading. Oh, cool. Nice. Fellow Canadian. I mean, so glad to find this video in a half hour. I will be busy. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Thanks for joining in from Canada. We have people from Europe, from US, from everywhere. So thank you all for chiming in with some questions and comments. As I was saying, we were, talking about education with Lefteris and saying, how can we find better education system and apply them? Because we have the theory, we know some of the best things to do about education. We're not doing them. And some of the place that is doing it is Scandinavia and Finland. And for those who don't know, Finland is not in Scandinavia, but it's very close and has similar values.
Really?
So Finland was really the number one country in the world for many years in terms of education performance. And what happens in Finland is actually they decrease the amount of hours at school and the amount of homework after school and the amount of tests, and people are happier and more performant, right? So it's the same thing at school, same thing at work. Really to think back that the external success is not the goal. To me, my success is, am I happy today? Then I succeeded. If the business is doing good, if I raise this, if my podcast has likes, I don't care. If I succeeded today, it's my happiness. Am I happy? Did I make a person smile around me? Did I make a bad joke? That's my success every day. And we have one more comment that you can read, Mark.
I'm just getting to that age, mid-career, more like trying to launch some self-employment in the initial stages and how it can feel like a rut and stagnation. Thank you for that comment. Yeah, it's normal. I think a lot of people, they are venturing into self-employment, entrepreneurship. And in the beginning, I think, Christian, you and I have very well experienced this, that sometimes it does feel stagnant. It does feel like things aren't moving, and it can be frustrating for a lot of people. And the uncertainty of perhaps if this doesn't work out, having to go back to employment, it's another cause for burnout, right? So it's normal to have these worries and to have worries about whether, and to have, defeating depression, enjoying the little things and successes can actually be big. Of course, being very grateful and appreciative of those things is extremely, it's essential.
It sounds mundane and appreciate the good and the small things, but neuroscience, psychology, and personal experience shows me that it's really a big key. It's a small thing that you appreciate, but a big key in your daily happiness, your productivity, your irritability for people around you, right? If you're unhappy at work or at home, people around you, you got to feel that, right? That's really affecting you and your family, your community in a good way. And to, look at entrepreneurial aspect that we had from our comment, thank you. It is definitely, to achieve, you have to create this greater risk tolerance, right? If you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to accept that there is more risk and uncertainty. Oh, I didn't expect this video to really look at the chat as some of those, but we do. Why we do this live on every Friday is for it to be interactive and that we really address real people's concern and not just, Mark and I talking, which is also fun. Please don't be shy to talk about anything that's on your mind.
As long as it's appropriate, we'll read it. This is a great conversation. Thank you. Yeah. I do this in streaming music and trying to uplift people, even if it's just a little here and there. That's great to hear. Try to help other people.
Creativity, art, music, helping people, that will make you happier and decrease your chance of burnout. And again, more performance. They're linked, right? You're less going to the potential burnout and you're going to the performance. A lot of great things that you can contribute to the world, small and big. And if you do it with passion, and as Lefteris said, to try to contribute good for the world, you'll definitely be happier, more productive, and maybe you'll get money. That is not in your control. Control only what you can.
I had a mentor once tell me that the money follows when you follow your interests. A lot of people have an inherent interest in helping other people. And if you do that, then money money will follow. But if you try to chase the money, it might become harder.
Good advice. So we just want to also, say again, if you're in your 40s or your 30s or 50s or in mid-career, we just don't want you to suffer in silence. You can share that on the chat. You can share that with us later. You can share that with one of your loved ones, but feel that there is this ability to talk about it. We have this awareness about all the stressors, about what psychology and neuroscience says, about what happiness says we can do. And we really want to let you know that you can do it. And it starts by sharing it and saying, hey, I need a little bit of help and motivation. And it's, again, not weakness, but wisdom to be doing that. And yes, we are cheering you on. Thanks for the comment again.
We've got a new fan and subscriber.
Great. Yes. Yeah. If you enjoyed this, please share also with your network. As we're growing, it helps us bring us more guests. When the guests show up, no pun intended, no jokes. But really, we have a lot of upcoming guests next week as well, talking about play therapy, talking about, is it ADHD next week? Talking about autism spectrum in March as well. So suffering in silence can be the worst, is true. And that's a comment. We are here to, with compassion, trying to let you release your suffering. Are you guys in Canada? We're all over the world. I'm currently in Montreal, Canada. Mark is currently in Germany, but we travel a bit everywhere. So yeah, we're definitely happy to, thanks for saying happy to join as a guest on the screen in the future. Contact our marketing team if you want to be on this podcast. You can find us on our website, awedigitalwellness.com. Definitely looking to engage with some interesting guests. And can we think about other questions that the audience might want to ask themselves this week, if they're feeling that they might be burnout or if they want to prevent potential physical and mental exhaustion? So yeah, any prompts or insights that you think people should reflect on as we're coming to an end of this fun podcast?
You mean AI prompts that they can?
No, just human prompts.
Human prompts. I think, take it for granted, but gratitude. I think practicing gratitude, reframing, I have to I get to. That's been a big one. Life is happening for you, not to you. That's something from Tony Robbins really stuck with me. All these things, they make you appreciate life a little more.
For me, I would say, if you're in your mid-career and you're thinking about, going to do something creative, a startup, another job, a promotion, a demotion, you're feeling those emotions with anxiety, uncertainty, just ask yourself, are you willing to do this for the next 10 years? Right?
Yes.
And if not, then what do you need to do to change slowly towards something else that makes you more fulfilled? Just that small question and really answering that. And nothing's permanent. What you're doing today might be different next week, next year, and in the next 5 or 10 years. Guide really your direction. Someone is asking, what is our website again? awedigitalwellness.com. Yes, the Cirque du Soleil is from Montreal. I love going to see the Cirque du Soleil. And, maybe your podcast is a circus. I don't know. It's not there yet, but we're trying it to be slightly moderated, but fun as well. So yeah, thanks for a lot of comments. Thanks for your thoughts, Mark. And we will be back next week with a few podcasts. Stay tuned, subscribe, share. It really helps if you like what we do to share with your family, friends, coworker, as we try to give more awareness. So next one is March 3rd. We have
Rachel Alt.
Is it 3-3-3? Easy. 3 p.m. 3rd of March, 3 p.m. Eastern, March 3rd. We're going to try to make a comprehensive, long podcast with special guests, Rachel Altavar, PhD in psychology and expert in play therapy. The circus continues next week.
Have a great weekend, everyone. And thank you so much, Christian. Again, thank you for everyone for tuning in to another episode of the AWE Digital Wellness Podcast. Please follow us on the socials that were listed below, awe.wellness on Instagram, at AWE_digital_wellness, and TikTok, AWE_digital. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you again so much. And take a moment to just appreciate and be grateful for everything that you have in your life. Be loved and be happy. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate you. And thank you for all the guests. Talk soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week for more awe and awesome conversations. Make sure to follow us and comment on your thoughts on this week's topic. I'm your happiness expert and co-host, Christian Dominic. Please find and reach out to us directly and visit our website at awedigitalwellness.com. See you next time. Thanks for your curiosity. Looking forward to your comments, and keep on smiling.